All right. Actually, oh no, you don't need a pink. You can survive without it. Yeah, you can survive without the pink. You're fine. I'll write it in pink marker though still. All right, team. Yeah, unfortunately I don't have a pink marker in my box because I replaced it with the red pens. I also put the pink markers in the stationery packs for my juniors, so that's why they're not there. All right, team. I'm ready to start. Are you? All right. So, if you guys remember when I saw you guys on Thursday, we looked at the excellence exemplar for the microbes topic. This one, they have done it under the context of fungus growing in compost piles. I think that's what they had. Am I making it up? I think it's fungus. Okay, cool. Now, I know that the vast majority of you guys are doing the microbes topic. A handful of you guys are not, and I don't want you to think that if you're not doing the microbes, it's not useful information. Remember, I'm trying to teach you a skill set in this lesson, and that's basically how to do research-based reports. When I say research-based reports, I'm not talking about experimental research. I'm talking about going on the internet, reading documents, and then summarizing that document into a report. And this is not something that's just unique to science. You do this in multiple subjects like social studies and stuff like that. So it is a useful skill to transfer over. The other useful skill that I'm trying to teach you guys is to understand the achieve merit and excellence criteria, so that way you know when you are writing and when you're researching for your assessments, you know what kind of depth you need to go into. What I'm finding with you guys, because I know you guys are a really high overachieving bunch, which is great, is that you sometimes overdo it. Yeah? You write way more than you need to, or you spend way too much time on the assessments. For certain people, that's okay because you have the time, but I want you guys to be mindful that there's going to be times in your life when you do not have the time to do that thoroughness to it. A good example would be at university. And you're going to be really under a lot of time pressure. There's going to be so much content they're going to want you to cover. So you guys need to study smart and efficiently when we're doing things like this, okay? What else did I want to say? I think that was the main thing that I kind of wanted to hit home. Also, it's just important to have a work-life balance. So if you're interested in this stuff and you want to go down the rabbit hole, feel free to do more reading. But if you just need to pass the assignment, then just do what you need to do to pass or get the grade you want. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are obviously word limits to assessments. I used to not do that because I was like, I want you guys to have the freedom to be able to go into the depth you need to for your answers, but then I realized people were writing me way more than they needed to. So now I'm starting to put in word limits. I think it is a realistic word limit for what you need for excellence. If I feel that you aren't reaching excellence and the words are the issue and you need to have actually more material, then I'll increase the word limit, okay? So those are kind of things to think about. So let's look at this assessment criteria and double check that we have these things met. We'll start at the achieved and we'll work our way up to excellence because we want to make sure you have your bases covered. Unfortunately, with a lot of internal assessments, if you do not meet the achieved criteria, you can't get the higher grade. So it builds on top of each other. Now, it's really bad in chemistry in particular because the way that they scaffold the chemistry assessments or the marking is that a merit level thing, if you miss, marks you, like you could have an excellence level answer, but you forget something like an equation, it can result in you going from an excellence down to the achieved because it's a merit level requirement. I can't just drop you down to merit. I have to drop you all the way down to achieved. So chemistry is really picky like that. Biology is not so much. Biology is designed a bit better so that way you do have to get the previous stuff to get the next level anyway. So that's some things to keep in mind. All right, the first thing we want to think about then is, has the student described a life process of the pathogen? So we read this the other day. I'm hoping we don't need to reread it. The other thing we did the other day was just looking at the literacy and building our vocabulary. Anyway, from a quick snapshot, what do you think these life processes that they talked about? Respiration, that was the big theme. Yep. So they talked about respiration. You guys can note that down on here. The other thing that they talked about, if we think about Mrs. C. Gren, what else was in there? That was another one that came up. It's the N in Mrs. C. Gren. Nutrition. So they also talked about the need for nutrition. You could also argue that they talked about, when they're saying a life process, the main life process that they were talking about, if we're thinking about it from like day to day, what's going on, we think about digestion. So I would also think digestion would be another way to say that, or another way to talk about life process. So they have talked about multiple life processes. They're all in the same kind of ballpark of you need nutrition to do cellular respiration. In cellular respiration, you often have to have digestion to break things down. Okay? So that student, I would say, has met the achieved criteria for describing the life process. Are we good so far? All right. Next thing they talked about, so now I'm going to move on to my orange, because like I said, I'm trying to keep a color code to help your life get a little bit easier. The next thing they talk about is describe the abiotic or biotic factor in the human body that affects the process of the pathogen. In this case, this exemplar was not talking about the human body, but it was talking about the compost heat, and we're thinking about what sort of factors that could have come into place that would have affected it. Now again, I'm not going to highlight a specific area because I think you can get that from the general sense. So what is the biotic factors or abiotic factors they talk about? What's one of the life process factors? What life process did they talk about in this assessment? Temperature. The other one you could say is, so is temperature abiotic or probiotic? Sorry, abiotic or biotic? Abiotic, because it's not living. They also talked about another one, I would say, and that is nutrients. But remember, you just need one. So they also talked about nutrients. Now, nutrients falls into two categories when they were talking about it. They were talking about organic matter that they are breaking down. And they were also talking about elements. So they talked about like phosphorus, nitrogen, and carbon. When we talk about elements, are we talking about abiotic or biotic? Abiotic again. When we're talking about when we're talking about organic matter, do you think that's abiotic or biotic? Organic matter. Do you want to look at the word for how we define organic? Carbon molecules and structures. I would actually call organic biotic because it's like you're talking about breakdown of like food, which is usually coming from like an animal or some source. All right? So has that student met that requirement, you think? Yeah, because you read the whole thing, they've talked about these guys. When you're doing this assessment, you don't need to have multiple, you only need to have one, but if you have multiple, that is fine because then it helps you get the higher marks because then it shows your interconnectedness. All right? So that was the second one. Now we're moving on to the yellow color. And this one is looking at observational data. If you guys remember when you are doing for the... Okay. When we talked about observation, you guys are in Prac Science as well as the science class. You guys are currently doing an assessment talking about the different types of investigation. Observation data, what are we talking about? Things you can see, these things that you're just observing. Now, I want you to keep in mind that there's primary and secondary. I think they've used the word observational too general in a sense that it's not like when you're classifying it, it's not necessarily the data you're looking at is always observational data. I think what they're trying to state in this case is that the data doesn't need to be collected in a formal setting. So they're saying you don't have to do a proper experiment. So physics phenomenon, you guys are doing a proper experiment, so your data is actually not observational. In fact, it has clarified in your assessment that it needs to be quantifiable data and you need to have numbers. So just keeping in mind. I think they've used the term poorly in this, or I have used the term poorly when I've written that. Anyway, all I'm saying is we need some data, and we need data that's either primary or secondary, and I've hopefully hit this home enough times. Primary is data you collected yourself. Secondary is data that other people have collected. Either option is fine. You see how there's the or coming up again? That means that you can use either or. Depending on what you have chosen, you can get primary. If you have chosen something like a virus or malaria, we are not going to be able to collect primary data. You have to take secondary data. So we can see in this piece here that they have given two sets of data. They've given this set of data here. Now, is this set of data here primary or secondary when you look at it? Primary, secondary, primary. All right, they had another piece of data here. They had a piece of data over here as well. Is this primary or secondary? Secondary. They've taken it from another source. We can see here that they've highlighted the source as well. Make sure you give credit when you are putting images and things like that. All right. Did this student need to have both primary and secondary to get achieved? No. So they've gone above and beyond. In fact, we will look at it and see, do they actually need it for the merit or excellence? And the answer is no. But it does show, okay, let me backtrack. There's no requirement in this assessment to have both primary and secondary data. There's no requirement saying you have to have multiple sources of data. But the thing is, when we are looking at achieved merit and excellence, the excellence level student does a comprehensive understanding. So that means they have a really thorough understanding of the work. And this student, even though they weren't required to include two sets of data, has, and that is shown they do comprehensively understand what they are doing. Okay? So that one's ticked off. Let's start looking at the merit. So now I'm going to go to green. All right. So green here is we want to see that the student has explained the abiotic or biotic factor, and they've also linked it into how it affects the life process, how that interacts life process of, in this case, I'm saying pathogen, but in their case, they were just doing compost heaps. So let me just show you where that is in the document. All right. So I just make sure I got the right colors because now I don't know which color I want. There we go. Okay. Now I know. Okay. Okay. So the location in this assessment that I found that they met that requirement was over here. That said, as the temperature rises, this causes the enzymes involved in extracellular digestion to break down the organic matter more quickly, which means more nutrients are absorbed for the cell's respiration. That to me was a sentence that was highlighting to me that the student understood the factor and how that factor then influenced the life process. So they've talked about temperature rising. You see how they have the keyword causes, or that linking word causes, the enzymes. So the difference between an achieved and a merit is the achieved level student just gives me a list of facts. The merit level student links them together with linking words like because and therefore. All right, that's the linking bit. So causes the enzymes involved in extracellular digestion to break down the organic matter more quickly, which means, that's another linking word, more nutrients are absorbed for the cell respiration. All right, that's what I'm looking for the merit kind of level work. Okay, the way I like to think about merit level work is you are usually explaining the how. You're usually thinking about mechanism. And I'll write that down over here. So merit level, we are thinking about the how. We're thinking about maybe mechanism. Achieved, let's go back here. You are just stating facts. You're listing facts, but not linking. And even though we are talking about this one assessment in particular, this kind of style is consistent through the science ones I find. And I would say it's probably going to be likely for other subjects as well that it'll be similar in how they're distinguishing between achieved, merit, and excellence. But definitely in science, whenever you guys are writing essays, this is usually what we mean by the achieved and the merit levels. All right? Keep going. All right, now I'm going to the blue. And that is the explain the relationship using supporting data. Using supporting data. All right, so what I mean by that one is the student here has created 2 pieces of data that they've provided, but that's not enough to get merit, even if they have 2. What we need to see is that you're actually explaining the data that you're looking at. You're not just putting it in there, you're actually unpacking the how that data works. So the location I found this was over here. However, the graph shows below that temperature of compost, it gradually decreases over a period of time. And then they talk about how, and I'm not going to highlight this because this now goes into the excellence, but I will put an arrow to it. Yes, so however, the graph below shows that the temperature of the compost gradually decreased over the period of time. This is caused by the reduction of organic food matter available to be broken down by extracellular digestion, causing a decrease in nutrients absorbed for cell respiration and therefore less heat being released and trapped. I'll take that last sentence as well. So that one here, they are talking about the temperature data, and they're giving me a reason why that temperature data is what it is. Okay? So they're basically unpacking the data. And reasons for it. Cool. And just one last one. I'm going to move on to purple now. What was that color? Oh, now I remember. I was going to highlight. Maybe I did have some pink. Oh, I'm sorry. I did have some pink. Where did my pink marker go? Sorry. You know how we were talking about cellular respiration and nutrients? Let me just highlight the sentence I saw that because I forgot I actually did highlight that in here. All right. Here's the achieved nutrients absorbed through for cellular respiration, main purpose. These are examples of the achieved. And then the last one was enzymes secreted. So those are kind of the areas I saw for achieve that kind of proved it to me that they were talking about a life process, so cellular respiration. Sorry about that. Cool. All right, excellence. All right, so excellence then, let me just grab this piece of paper. We're looking at the purple. This next color. So we are asking ourselves, I'm just trying to multitask. Okay. Thoroughly discuss the relationship's interconnectedness. So that's the big one. And I know you got, ooh, that purple does not come up well. I'm sorry, guys. Remember, you guys asked me to kind of define interconnectedness, and we talked about that as being, oh, what did I even say? Where'd it go? Did I write it down? I don't know if I wrote it down for you guys. I don't think I did. All right. So interconnectedness. I think I did break down this word for you guys. Oh no, because we wrote it down over here. Where'd you go? There it is. Interconnected. So where did I write it? No, I think I just talked about it. I just showed you guys the word. Yeah, we just talked about it. Why did I write it here and not somewhere else? Oh, well. Okay, you guys know what I mean by interconnected, though. Okay. So we're looking for interconnectedness. And when we look at this interconnected, we're talking about explaining how the pathogen life processes affect the environment. So when we are thinking about this assessment, let me just grab a different color that we haven't. Actually, no. Okay. So you have the environment, which has factors. Those factors influence the living organism. Like that. Okay? This is the achieved merit. Then being able to link it back to the environment and how the living organism is going to change the environment, that is now your excellence. All right, now this applies to the human impact people because you guys are having some complex ideas thinking about how humans have influenced the environment. But you're thinking about here, humans influencing the environment. You're skipping kind of the first step. Does that make sense, human impact people? Okay. What are you doing? It also helps you think about the big picture. So when we talk about the excellence level, should get this focus. When we talk about merit, we are just talking about one causing the other. When we are talking about excellence, why are you doing that? Stop doing that. When we talk about, I unplug and replug it back in. No, you're going to behave. No, you're not going to behave. All right, let me just unplug it and plug it back in. You see me temporarily. See if that helps it. Okay. When you guys talk about the excellence is a lot about thinking about the extended abstract. So let me just grab my planner for you guys so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. We've talked about solo taxonomy before. So when I'm planning your lessons and when I'm writing your learning intentions and your success criteria, I use solo taxonomy. And this is kind of some key words to kind of help us understand the difference between the different levels of solo taxonomy. So we're talking about different levels of complexity of thinking. Yeah? NCA is based off of solo taxonomy. So when we give you guys your grades, we are looking at your ability to think critically. This is what makes NCA stand out from other assessment models. So like Cambridge is another example of an assessment model that they use in the UK. SAT and ACT are stuff they use in the States. Those ones are different because they don't assess you based off of your ability to think critically. They just usually assess you on your content knowledge. So it's basically testing to see if you can regurgitate information. So this is one of the things I do like about NCA because I went obviously in the American system and it was very content heavy. So what we're looking at is your ability to have these complex, more complicated ideas. Unistructural just means, you're just thinking about like one kind of thing. Multistructural is kind of like multiple kind of things. So basically it's kind of like you have, let me find my marker. So basically you have like one idea. This is multiple ideas like that. They're just kind of all scattered about. Relational is you have multi-ideas and you're able to link them together, like one to another, like that. Okay? Extended abstract is that you have multiple ideas and you're linking them in multiple different ways. And even with those ideas, you then can project it onto a new example kind of thing. So that's how I personally visualize solo taxonomy. All right, and then there's like different words we use. So you'll notice that the words I use, I'm going to use different words depending on what level you guys are at. If you guys want this sheet, I'm happy to upload this onto Google Classroom so you guys can just think about how the different terms mean different things. It's useful because when you read assessments, it can help give you a guiding idea of what level of answer they're expecting. So when we start doing externals next term, you'll notice that when they give questions, they'll use different words like explain or discuss. and that will help you give an idea of what level of answer you need to write so you're not overwriting. All right? So that was my tangent on that one. So, where do we find this in the assessment? Let me just grab my piece of paper so I can see where I highlighted. Okay, so here are some locations that I see this interconnectedness. I see them being able to basically finish the circle. You see how in this place they talk about the temperature and how the temperature affects the enzymes? They then take it one step further and they have this and here. And it goes, and more heat is released by the fungus but remains trapped in the compost, further increasing the temperature of the compost. So what they're saying here is that you have a feedback loop. All right, so now we're talking about how the organism is affecting the environment. We good? All right, the other location that I saw this was over here when they talk about the use of food. So the food in the compost pile is finite. Finite means it will run out. It's a set limit. Eventually they're going to run out of food. And since they're going to eventually run out of food, that's going to then affect their life, their ability to survive. So the life process of using food is going to eventually change the environment, and the environment eventually is going to die off. So reduction of organic molecule being broken down by extracellular digestion, causing a decrease in the nutrients absorbed for the cellular respiration, and then therefore less heat being released and trapped. So now, like I said, they're completing the circle. I'm sorry that purple is so dark. I did not realize it was going to be that dark. All right? We okay with that? Okay. Can't remember what else I was trying to say about that. Oh, when you guys are researching your pathogens, be mindful of thinking about how that pathogen affects the human body, because that is then how the pathogen's life process is then influencing the environment. A lot of it's going to be obviously related to immune response. Okay. So the last place that I would say that I saw excellence level evidence is this last sentence here, which is a really good summary sentence because now you're showing that you're tying all your information together. So this means other organisms in the compost pile use the nutrients made available by extracellular digestion for cellular respiration, which releases more heat into the compost, interconnectedness environment, and further increases the temperature. So again, they're trying to show the full circle link. They're trying to be very clear and blunt to state this is showing that this is simply not just a one-directional relationship. It actually is a feedback relationship. All right, cool. And that's it. That's all I wanted to kind of show you with it. All right, it'll help you guys with your writing skills and things like that. Okay, are there any questions from that? No? All right, I'm mindful of time. We end at 10:30, don't we? Okay, cool. That gives you guys half an hour. So I want you guys to continue, obviously, on with your internal work for the remaining half hour. I won't give you guys a SMART goal because I think that's going to buy too much time up and it's only half hour. I actually am, with that feedback, I want you guys to think about where you are, and I want you guys to think about the research you've already gathered. And I know you guys, like I said, I think some of you guys are over-researching. I think some of you guys are going down the wrong rabbit hole for research. So have this be a time to kind of think about what you might need from the research that you've gathered. The other thing I want you guys to potentially start doing, and it's okay to do this, even though I did give you deadlines, I'm mindful that it might actually be useful for some of you guys to start outlining your reports and start writing your reports. I would say definitely outline before you start writing because you want to use your words efficiently. And doing that time to write, to outline will help you make sure you're being efficient with your words because then you're going to waffle less. You're going to go back and forth less. So having a good outline and plan, basically a plan, before you start writing or before you start creating your report will help. Okay? It is okay for you guys to start doing some planning at this point because when you guys are doing your planning, you might realize that you're missing some stuff and thus want to go back to doing your research. So I would say at this point, we're in week 7, right? And I want your assessments by week 10 to be done. I ideally want it done by week 9 so that week 10 we can actually share what you guys have worked on for this term, or these 2 terms, because I think that would be really interesting as a class. Because I know microbes people, you guys have basically chosen different pathogens. It would be interesting to learn about each other's pathogens. So I would say aim for week 9 to have basically your report done, so that week 10 we can do a nice show and tell. Okay? Make sense? All right. Cool. Hop to it then.